Welcome to my Boulevard. All right, so we've kind of, the journey that we've taken, part one was about the foundational addiction, part two is functional addiction, part three is the destruction. Is when those patterns, those behaviors, the numbing out process, we start to see it crater our lives. Talk a little bit about that. I mean, your story.
I mean, it was from 30, 31, 30, up until 40, 39, 40. And it was the maturation. It was like almost like what had been in a crock pot that then moved to an oven. Then we moved to like a pressure cooker at this point where everything's just getting cooked at a high speed. The phone sex was off the charts. The pornography, wasn't.
What would you consider? Like, is this now daily? Is this
daily?
Like
We're daily.
multiple times?
Daily use multiple times.
But are you still able to hide it? I mean, is anybody asking?
Well,
you
let me. Yes, let me. Okay. So in the beginning of the destruction, it was daily use of phone sex, pornography. Starting to flirt with people when I was out. That was probably where the destruction just got into a pressure cooker, where it was like I was married to my ex-wife and I was still seeking validation from anywhere I could find it. Okay. Yeah. Instead of leaning in and having the true intimacy with the person I was married to, it was like, well, they're not giving me what I want. We're in difficulty. They're not communicating the way I want to be communicated to. So I'm just going to see if I can feel that validation from anything that will that will let me feel like I'm enough, I'm worth it,
How many years were you in functional until you started?
I'd say functional addiction was, and this is crazy to say, but foundational went through 22, and honestly 10 years I was in functional. I was functioning, and I'd go through time where I wouldn't, what I call, or what's called acting out. I wouldn't do anything for 2 weeks. Yeah. And I think we've talked about that in another segment where I was just like, all right, 2 weeks, 4 weeks crater, 2 weeks up, 6 weeks cratering, that kind of thing. So
you was in that period for about 10 years.
Right. And so the train is going, 60, 70, 80 miles an hour. Now we're pushing the train up to 120, 140, 150, not made for those kind of tracks. Right. And it's like, daily use of pornography, daily use of phone sex, and then it's like, oh, well, that's not enough dopamine. I can flirt with this person. Oh, I'm flirting with them. Can I get to the point where I can get their number? Right. Oh, I got their number. Let me actually call them. Oh, now I'm in a sexual relationship only with someone while I'm still married. I'm meeting this person to have sex and get my sexual needs met, but then I'm going home and going to work and doing all of these things. But there were times at the very end where you're talking just, 2 relationships at a time, 3 relationships at a time, seeing escorts. I did, when that ball went down, that's when the train started to just get in a place that was out of control. Yeah. And that lasted for, and gratefully so, 3.5 years. I don't know that it could have gone much longer, because I tell people this when I tell my story in 12-step groups. I would have killed myself. Yeah. And I say that with all respect to anyone who's lost anyone through suicide or tried to kill themselves that's listening to this. I was out of control. And I remember shortly after, so my life blew up. My ex-wife found an iPad. Everything came up, the text messages from escorts and someone I was having sex with at the time. And it just was like lava coming out of a volcano at that point.
Let me just stop you for a minute, because someone who's listening and haven't had the many times that we've sat in the tears and all of the things, like, how have you gotten to the point where you can just talk about this and not, you know what I'm saying, and not like tear up? Because like, I just don't want, because I know like people, I don't want people to see like this sense of, oh, he's just kind of talking about it, just kind of going through and like, but like, how have you gotten to that point? Because I know that there was a lot of tears, a lot of hard days.
So, a lot of hard days, a lot of hard months, a lot of hard years in the beginning of recovery. But I think you were actually getting ready to get to the tear part when I told the end, because I know sometimes I can talk, and I don't have shame and guilt around this, because I truly believe God has set me free, and I live a life that is truly with Him at the core and walking in a congruent life. Yeah. Who I am with my girlfriend, same person I am with my daughter, same person as I sit here. Doesn't mean I don't have things that come in and that I have to fight off, but I'm not going to give in to those things. Everything blew up in April of 17, or 16, sorry. No, 17, sorry. I always get that confused. Made arrangements to go to a sex addiction recovery inpatient. They couldn't take me till June. I was laying in my master bedroom at the time, and I had a 9mm to my head. And I said, God, you either take this from me or I need to leave the earth. I'm just not worthy anymore to be here. And I do office leasing for a living, and a client who was a pastor of a church that I had just helped find space over in Vinings knocked on the door. I let him in my house, and he said, he was the first person I told outside of my ex-wife who knew. He was the first person, and he looked at me and he said, I've been through something similar. I'll be here when you get back. And I was like, okay, God, I see you. It was like this time where it was like, you answered that prayer, I'll take the next step. So
No, I just think, man, this has been an incredible journey. Like incredible. I mean, it's in so many different ways, and and I know your passion behind this. I know your heart. I know even the desire to communicate, to set other people free. It was in 2017 when we was going through something similar here at the church. That you were like, before you even had the journey, you were willing to say like, hey, however I can share, however I can be present for the people. I mean, you talked to some of our people, and it's just even in that time, I just remember having a conversation after. You didn't share me what was talking about, but just knowing that there were guys that were that were looking for safe spaces. And I've unfortunately have seen the destruction, and that people have not recovered from the destruction of similar stories and similar testimonies that they have, and your passion to allow people the space to be able to really process their story, and then give them handlebars and tools to help them get out, because they don't have to be stuck. They don't have to allow this to destroy them, even though this is the destructive section and part of it. And so I just think that that's really, really important, to have. So what would you say to that person that has said, it's too late for me? I've already lost my wife, my spouse, I've already lost my spouse, I've already lost my job, I've lost my career, I've already lost everything. So, it is already too late for me. And as someone who has ended up getting a divorce and has, went through some of that, like how would you encourage that person?
Yeah, well, it's only too late if you're in a coffin. And that's what I say. I've had friends go through rehab that had to go to jail for however they acted out, and they've come out and they're functioning. They're great members of society who contribute. I've lost 2 people from treatment who committed suicide that relapsed. So if someone is struggling that's listening to this with any kind of addiction, the first thing is get around and get help from someone who also struggles with the same thing, that is a little bit ahead, that can help. Now, you're going to need some therapy. You're going to need a good therapist. I have what I consider to be the best therapist. Her name's Marie. Phenomenal human being.
And how often do you talk to Marie?
Every 2 weeks right now.
2 weeks.
Yeah. But in the beginning, it was every week, sometimes twice a week. I would have to go after, and that was after I got out of treatment. So I think the first thing is, all of recovery is for people who want to be recovered. When the pain of recovery is less than the pain of the addiction, that's when we will start to see change happen. And I think if anyone who is listening to this is in that destruction where their life is unraveling, someone's found out about something, they can't control drinking, they've had a DUI, they've ended up in the hospital X amount of times for drug usage, they're losing so much weight because they're working out, they're overeating to the point where their body is responding in an unhealthy way. I love 12 steps because it's the most honest place. There's a 12-step modality for every single thing that we battle in the addiction world. And that is the most safe place where you can walk in as a person, I struggle with this, I need help. And the people will love you no matter if you've relapsed, if you're the first time there or you've relapsed 30 times. Now, from there, it's a process to build and having people that can be truthful and empathetic at the same time. We're going to sit here with you, but we're not going to let you stay here.
That's good. And I like to think about those people as like my PT. I tell the story oftentimes that I ruptured my patella tendon in the first 6 weeks. They kept it straight and let the scar tissue build as it reconnected. And in the next 6 weeks, they literally break the scar tissue. And I talk about that. It's just like, she loved me enough to allow me to go, you know, to not push me too hard, but she also loved me enough not to allow me to stay there.
That's right.
And to keep pushing and to keep pushing. And so I think if you're in that like destruction, you know, there is another side. There is recovery. And I just want to encourage you to do that. And in all these videos, we're going to be putting a link to get in contact with either David or with people with my Boulevard so that we can walk alongside you in this journey. Because I think what we've said is just the idea of creating safe spaces.
Absolutely.
You need that safe space to begin that work. And so just appreciate you sharing.
Yeah, thank you.